Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the World Wanderers podcast. We are excited that you're joining us and listening to this episode. Today, we are catching up with some great friends of the show, Jake and Michelle Schomp.
Yeah, the last time we had Jake and Michelle on the podcast, we were all in Mexico together. I believe it was the fall of 2019. And we had their kids on, Henley and Jagger. We had a super fun episode. And then we actually got to see them when they passed through Panama on a cruise in early 2020, obviously before all the pandemic craziness started. And so basically we catch up with Jake and Michelle from when we saw them in Panama. They tell us about their 77-day cruise that they did all around South America and Antarctica, being on a cruise as the pandemic was happening in March 2020, what it was like being grounded for well over a year, and then their decision to take a family trip to Tanzania. We dive into what they did in Tanzania, how they planned it, what it was like to be in Tanzania in 2021. And then we talk a little bit about their current trip, which is Nicaragua. That's where they joined us from, and they had lots of cool things to share about that. So lots of good travel stuff in this episode. It was really fun to catch up with them, and we're really excited to dive in with this episode. All right, here it is. Jake and Michelle, welcome back to the podcast. We're really excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. We're excited to talk to you guys again. It's been so long.
So excited to be back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last time we did an episode with you guys was in person in Mexico, which was, I think like 2019. And then the last time we saw you guys was in Panama in January 2020. So before all the pandemic craziness happened, you guys were starting a cruise going all the way, around South America to Antarctica. So maybe you can start by catching us up from the last time we saw you and connected with you. How was that cruise that I think it was 70 days or something like that?
How fun was it that you guys came to see us in the canal and we were waving to you from the boat?
That was wild.
It was so cool. And I was like, this will be the coolest experience for the kids. Henley and Jagger are going to love this. And after I was like, I think I liked that more than anyone else. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
I have all these pictures of you from Zoom range of you with a huge grin on your face. Just so happy to find us.
It was such a cool experience just going through the canal and actually knowing somebody on the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah, that cruise was incredible. It's a 77-day cruise that ended up getting cut short to 75 days or something. But not my first pick of vacations or trips really, because our whole life is vacation, I guess. But it was all Jake really planning this one. But I have to say, I ended up loving it. I'm not a cruise person, but it was really incredible.
Yeah, we take turns basically more or less planning our travels. And so I definitely chose that trip. I have this vision of traveling around the globe on a boat and kind of sailing the world. And that was a way to get a sample of it, certainly with a lot of luxuries aboard. And also being able to stop in a lot of countries and experience a lot of kind of light touches on different countries.
And do it with kids, because so many boats don't allow kids of certain ages to get into Antarctica and some of the places we really wanted to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done one cruise, and I don't think Ryan's ever been on a cruise. So it's not really a way that we've personally traveled very much, but I think it's a really cool idea, especially for doing such a big continent like South America. I know you guys have backpacked South America. We've done the same. And I feel like that could be very challenging, especially with small kids. But this is such a cool way to know that you've got the same place to kind of sleep every night. And you've got the safety and the security of returning to the ship while also getting to explore all these really amazing places.
Yeah. And, honestly, it's a different way of travel, right? Where sometimes we spend a month in a place or 2 months in a place and we really get to know the ins and outs of the little villages and the people and the food and really explore it. This is more like a taste tester of all these different places, but you really get to see so much, so many different stops and port stops and along the way. And we just found it really fun. And then life on board the ship was really nice. And within 77 days, obviously, you really get to know people. So you feel like, you know, you have dinners, you have activities, and you see the same people over and over again, which ends up being really nice and more of a lifestyle. I felt that cruise was more of a lifestyle than I anticipated. Like we had activities to do all the time. There's a kids club for the kids, even though our kids were the only kids, obviously. Not obviously, but we kind of figured because 77 days, who's taking that kind of vacation. And yeah, so it's really nice in that sense.
Yeah, I think you really have to throw out your vision of what a cruise is when you take a long extended cruise like that, because it really has very few of the elements of a typical 1 week cruise. We had all these cultural experiences, and they brought on these guest speakers that were just amazing. It was like being back in, you know, going to your favorite college lecture hall to hear about the places you're going to go visit and all of the climate and environments you're going to go experience. It was really amazing.
And then for you guys, as you were going around, obviously things were changing around the world as well. But what were some of the highlights in terms of destinations and places you were seeing?
Yeah, and we really didn't have to think through the whole pandemic until very late in the trip. So we really got to enjoy the bulk of the circumnavigation of South America before any pandemic breakout had occurred. So we really got to experience some great parts of the western side of South America. We got to go to Ecuador, you know, first started in Panama where we met you and had an excursion with you guys, and then got to get a taste of Ecuador where they made the Panamanian hats. Kind of funny, but they actually make Panama hats in Ecuador. That's where they're made.
Yeah. And then Peru, we got great. I mean, we just love the food in Peru and exploring Peru. And we did Patagonia and Chile and a few other places in Chile.
And the ship actually brought on board a couple that had opened a restaurant in Lima, and they ran cooking classes up until the time we got to Lima, Peru. So we got to experience a lot of the cultural, you know, the culinary culture side of it before we even got to Peru. And then when we got to Lima, we got to go into the city and really taste some of those flavors in a cooking class.
Cool. That's
that
awesome.
was fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then, Patagonia, I loved. Antarctica. I mean, that's just incredible. It was one of those things where like, is Antarctica going to let us down? And it can be so hit or miss, I think, depending on the weather. And we just got really lucky. But there were quite a few people on our ship that have done the Antarctica once or twice and are doing it again, if that tells you anything. So our hopes were high there, and it did not let us down at all. It was just spectacular for those 5 days. And I think the kids would say Falkland Islands. That was really cool. And that's like, again, like that's such a hard place to get to, but on a boat, it makes it that much, or a cruise, it makes it that much easier. The kids loved the penguins there.
And the Falkland Islands, there's a huge penguin colony. So thousands and thousands of penguins, and you basically get to walk among them. So it was really like we were in the middle of the penguin family.
Yeah. And you take like quite an adventure out there, like a 3-hour off-roading adventure to get there. And getting to the Falkland Islands itself is pretty much an adventure. But the kids loved it. And the penguins were basically the size of Jagger, which was very fun. So that was cool. And then we went into the Amazon. I mean, we did so much in between there, but then we went into the Amazon for about a week or so, which was also an awesome way to see the Amazon. And maybe that would be a hard trip to plan without a boat. Right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, if you told me before we left that there were pink dolphins in the world, I would not believe you, but there are, and we swam with them all over us. Yeah.
Yeah. The Amazon was very interesting as well. So so we got to cover a lot of ground in those 77 days.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. We've swam with pink dolphins too, and it's just like the weirdest, coolest experience. So I'm glad you guys got that as well. And I mean, I guess just thinking back to like, as things were heating up with the pandemic, like, were you guys worried at all when you kind of heard about, like, I guess it would have been the Diamond Princess would have been the first cruise ship with like COVID cases, or were you just kind of like, we're just doing our thing?
I think at the time it felt pretty isolated to certain regions of the world, and South America was pretty much the last one to be impacted. As far as continents go, it seemed like. So those ships seemed to be in kind of a hot spot around Asia at the time. And it felt like we were isolated from that. So I don't think we had a lot of concern at that time.
No, we really didn't. I mean, we I specifically remember that we were like the captain threw like a party because we had to we lost our last two stops, which were Dominican Republic and French Guiana. And so we kind of hightailed it back, and we actually were like partying on the boat. And I remember whenever we would get internet and we'd look back and everybody was like kind of freaking out back home. And there we were like in this like kind of little nice bubble. Honestly, I wish I would have just stayed on there. It felt like life was free and nice and like wonderful. And it wasn't until we actually got into port that things started to kind of get a little bit more real. And then we were like not really sure what was happening and trying to take whatever precautions we could until we figured out what was happening.
But at the time, our ship had no cases. No one was ill on our ship. So we were kind of this sanctuary, a bubble. And it was one of those things at the end of the world, kind of like maybe we wish we were on a cruise like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys could be like the last, like, I don't know, couple hundred people on Earth. And you're like, we just won't go back to land ever again. We'll just fish and boil our own water.
I mean, had we had the choice now, we probably would go back on there.
It's commandeer this ship, become pirates. Yeah. And so that time, obviously, like going into the summer of 2020, I think was a weird time for everybody. Well, everyone in general, but especially travelers. I know for us, we were thinking we had gone back to Canada. We were trying to figure out like, what do we do next? Because normally we've got all these plans. We've got like, oh, we're doing this and we're doing this. But especially, you guys are traveling with kids. So it kind of adds that extra, levels of responsibility to it. What were you kind of thinking once you were back in the States for the summer about when you start traveling again?
Yeah. So, and just an update on our kids, they're now 6 years old and 8 years old. And so they are at an age where they're in elementary school, and they had previously been in school in Mexico, and they were able to continue their classes online in Mexico, which was great because of the pandemic, their courses went online. And so they had this great Spanish interaction every day while we were in the US. They were staying connected to their Mexican classmates. So it was a great experience. That was excellent. But at the same time, it was such a era of not knowing how the virus was going to impact the world and all that. So we're really just trying to kind of take a breath, take a beat, and decide what was safe for our family, what we could get away with, and what would be, most cautious for our family.
Because our original plan was come back from the cruise late March, which we did, and then go to Mexico in April sometime and finish out the Mexican school year before returning to Rhode Island, which we do every summer. And so we just took that online for the school in Mexico for those couple months.
And did you guys get like a place in Rhode Island, or what was that like?
Yeah, so we kept our plans. We rent a place in Rhode Island each summer just to stay connected to some of my family and friends we have there. So we did rent a place there, and it was basically kind of no contact with the people that rented it to us. We just grabbed the keys and were able to set up our normal routine in Rhode Island for the summer. And once the summer hit, it was largely back to outdoor living in Rhode Island. And we didn't really have to worry too much about.
At that point, everything was, as soon as the summer hit, everything was like open again and it seemed fine. And then at the end of the summer, kind of like what's happening now, everything was like kind of starting to close down a little bit, and we couldn't make travel plans. So we decided that we would put the kids in school in a bilingual public school in Rhode Island, and try the American school system out a little bit. And it just seemed like a good time to do that. So we stayed in Rhode Island for the fall and through the winter until we eventually, it was just a little bit too much for what we wanted for our kids. And we unenrolled them and pulled them out and went to Tanzania.
Yeah.
2020. What are we in? 2021.
What year are we in again? I keep seeing these memes that are like, there's like, I don't know, like 100 and some odd days left in 2021. And it's like, and we're all still processing 2020.
Yeah, right. It all seems to run together at this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, I feel like it's really interesting. I mean, we were back in Canada for 8 months between March and October. And we were very much kind of like in the summer and the fall, we were like, maybe this is like a sign from the universe that we just try and live in Canada more full time again. And we ended up deciding not to do that, which we're both super grateful for because Canada ended up doing really extreme lockdowns. But I'm curious for you guys kind of how that experience was, like not just spending the summer, but kind of settling for fall and winter. Like, was it like, okay, we could do this in maybe more normal times? Or was it like, no, we still really like the lifestyle that we'd built prior to this?
I think it was really comfortable. We kind of built a little bit of an environment for the kids where they had friend groups, and we went hiking every weekend with friends and did a lot of outdoor activities. And then we got into the routine of taking them to school every day. And so it was something that we kind of normalized and were able to attempt that stay at home traditional.
Well, yeah. And I think it was new and exciting for us because we hadn't really done that either. So it was something that we had always been talking about. It's like, what would it be like you said about Canada, right? It's the same with us. Like, what would it be like to go back to the US and try to put the kids in school there? And this just seemed like, okay, well, this is a sign saying, let's try it. And we actually really enjoyed it. We really enjoyed the fall. We really enjoyed the community. We really enjoyed like getting to expand our community in Rhode Island through their new friends and of course our current friends there. And just what Jake said, some of the, putting the kids in soccer or in activities and stuff. But I will say by winter, when things were just getting so strict, and it's winter in Rhode Island anyway, I think we were ready. I was like, I need to plan a trip or I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though. I'm curious, just from like photos and videos I've seen, it seems like Henley and Jagger quite enjoyed the snow.
We all did. And me too. I was like, anybody want to go outside with me and play? Anybody want to build an igloo? We loved it.
Yeah,
the first few snows, at least.
And Rhode Island is a classic New England state, so we got to experience the leaves changing in the fall, and collecting syrup and all of that, all the pumpkin carving and the Halloween fest. So it was a beautiful fall into the winter with the snowstorms.
Snowstorms on the beach, like snowball fights on the beach, like that couldn't get any more fun for me.
It was, yeah. So we definitely had and the kids tried snowboarding, so they did a snowboarding season. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What is I always just remember that quote when we went to Scotland, or somebody had said, like, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices. And I had to constantly keep that in mind in the winter in Rhode Island. I wore like the same 3 outfits, just like these thick layers so that I could remain warm because I like the warmth.
I don't know. I feel like whoever had that quote has not spent like a full winter in Alberta. I'm going to be quite honest. Negative 30 Celsius is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's a whole nother extreme I'm not willing to go to.
It's fun when you can like go outside and your eyelashes freeze together and your face burns. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, you guys started planning that trip to Tanzania. It was kind of interesting for us because we had someone on who was in Tanzania, and we've been hearing things about how like open things were in Tanzania, and we were kind of dealing with everything going on, and we're like, maybe we should go to Tanzania. And then like right around that time, I think Amanda mentioned that you guys were going to Tanzania. But what was that kind of planning process like, and what kind of led to that trip?
Yeah, so what led to it is that I needed to plan a trip. I was just like kind of getting antsy, and also we were like, let's see where we can go, what we can do, because we had tried the school year. It was great. We loved everything about it, except for the like really strictness of all the mandates. So I really just looked at places. We kind of were toying with French Polynesia. And then I'd really been wanting to take just an African safari. I wasn't really even sure where to start looking. And it's one of those things where you just like need to start somewhere with the trip planning. And I had all this time at that point because we weren't traveling, also trying to plan, which we typically are. And so French Polynesia kind of rolled itself out pretty quickly when they just had more mandates and quarantines and stuff like that. Yeah. And a lot of the other African countries did too. So it was really apparent pretty quickly which ones we could go to without having to quarantine. And originally we had wanted to take like, okay, if we have a month, we can go to this country and all over the place. But then you have to quarantine each time and different restrictions and tests. And, the tests now are a huge cost in travel for a family of 4. for us to test every time we leave a country. It's $100 each times 4 people. It starts to add up. So it really actually became a blessing in disguise that then Tanzania was open. And to make it easy on ourselves, we just decided to spend the whole 4 to 5 weeks there. And it ended up being great because then we really kind of got immersed a little bit more in Tanzania and we just fell in love with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We haven't been. It's definitely, I think, on both of our bucket lists, but I'd love to hear like just what you guys decided to do there and what the experience was actually like.
Yeah, it certainly was a lot of planning, and it was a lot of Michelle spent a lot of time negotiating, trying to figure out which the best safari company was that could kind of handle a 1-month trip, because typically they deal with people, they're there for 7 to 12 days and they're doing an activity every single day and it's this much per day. So when they started to multiply that out times a month, it became prohibitively expensive to go with a lot of those companies. So really, Michelle had to work with a lot of the companies to get them to realize, hey, listen, we're not trying to go on safari every single day. We're trying to do other cultural experiences, have a few down days in between, and see a little bit more of the country rather than just the hot spots that everyone goes to. So it took a while to narrow down and find that tour operator.
Yeah. And we were we also had a pretty big budget for this trip because we hadn't been traveling. So we kind of were like ready to go all in.
And on the other end of that spectrum, we had other friends that had traveled on safari in African countries, and they had done it kind of on a backpacker's budget. And some of their experiences were really negative. They were kind of passed around from tour company to tour company, didn't really know where they were going on certain days. So we didn't want that budget experience either. We wanted something in between.
Yeah.
That sounds like our like whole South American experience. We booked with this company and they haven't shown up, and now we're with this other company, but I think we're still going to the same place we originally wanted to go to. So that's cool, I guess.
Yep. That was kind of us prior to kids. And now with kids, we're kind of like, well, I don't know that works as well. So this was great. And we went with a company, and I'm not one to typically shout out company names because I get worried that somebody's going to use them and not have the same great experience. But I really loved this one. I did so much research that it was Unique Safaris Tanzania. And we worked with a lady called Lynn, and she just got it. You know, when somebody gets it, like I was like, okay, come back with like kind of an idea. I don't want you to spend too much time on it because I don't want to waste your time. And she just came back with these kind of preliminary itinerary that was very much how we want to travel. Like, and then the general manager of the hotel is going to take you into the local village and show you his village and get you into the local school there. And you can see this and that. And just like these local experiences that we were literally felt like the only tourists in Tanzania for at least the first like 2 weeks. And we just got into all these, things that you wouldn't find on your own. That's when I think it's valuable to use the tour company.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't even go into some of those like big national kind of like game reserve parks without a tour guide, can you?
No, that's right also.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the expenses come also, because every day you go into a park, there's a per person fee that you're spending in there. So that's a lot of the reason why the rates of travel there go up so high, because of all the game drives you're doing on safari.
And so can you walk us through like, kind of what your month there or your 5 weeks there looked like what you guys did?
Yeah, we arrived into Kilimanjaro, which was such a lush, green, vibrant area. I did not expect it at all.
It was right after rainy season. Like we were borderlining rainy season, and we just got lucky that it pretty much ended the week before we got there. And we got there early May.
Yes, we were there the whole month of May, in Tanzania, the whole month of May. And in Arusha is the town where we stayed near Kilimanjaro Airport. And we stayed at a big villa where they had 2 bedrooms for us. I think there were
4. We used 2.
And we had our own chef and our own server. So it felt very luxurious in a way. But at the same time, it was just this very nice, very elegant, but basic villa that we had all to ourselves. And so our meals were prepared each morning. We had the little animals come and visit us in the backyard that we'd never seen before. And it was just a really great way to be welcomed to Tanzania and not have to get up and go right as soon as we landed.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference. Most people get there, have a day, and then go on safari. And we had this whole week where we could kind of just get like slowly immersed into the Tanzanian culture and relax a little bit. And from there, we also went into the villages. We would do these like village walks through, these muddy dirt roads among the villagers. And we saw their local hospitals and their local women's centers and schools. And it was just a really cool experience. We got to do a lot of that kind of stuff the first week. And then from there, we went to Lake Manyara. And that was our first kind of experience with a game drive.
Yeah.
And that was just a day game drive, I guess it's not a small reserve, but it's kind of like a one road in, one road out kind of place. But we would want to stop at every zebra and elephant and giraffe. And our guide kept being like, you're going to see a ton of these. I promise this is not the last one. And we were like, really? He's like, just wait till you get to the Serengeti. And I guess that's why we saved the Serengeti the best for last. But we did Lake Manyara. We did Karatu is a town there that we kind of experienced a little bit of that town. And then on to Ngorongoro Crater.
Yeah. And it was great because everywhere we went, we really like to do things like have a cooking class. So the kids get to learn about the local food. And so our tour operator had set up cooking classes, either with local families, with the head chef at our villa, with, when we're at the Ngorongoro Crater, they had a cooking class with the head chef there. Yeah. So in combination with seeing all this wildlife and nature, we were also getting to have these personal experiences with culinary, with food, with different people that were the locals.
And we were some of like these places that we stayed, some of their first guests back. We are our tour guide's first guests since 2019. And so I know like there's some of that, people feel like, oh my gosh, should you be traveling? But honestly, like we felt so good about it because we put food on so many people's plates that have not had work since then. And we're really struggling. And they were just so excited to have us back. And I think the kids also brought them so much joy. And our kids, as you know, get very excited about everything and just like really want to talk to everybody. And the staff at each of these places, they really connected with, to the point where they cried almost everywhere that we left.
Our kids would be bawling, crying,
leave
this villa because they made such personal attachments to the people there. And the people were so kind and welcoming and went out of their way to make sure that you were having a great time. And so our kids were really impacted by that.
It was. So we did Ngorongoro Crater, and then which was absolutely stunning. Saw so many amazing animals, including the black rhino, which is one of the big five that apparently is the hardest and most elusive to see. And then we did Serengeti, and that was just incredible. Waking up, we got there late at night. So when we woke up, we pulled open our curtains and there were giraffes outside of our balcony, just grazing. And it was just like this, moment of like Serengeti-ness. I don't know how to explain it. We just had like the chills the whole time of that trip.
One of the things that we've always struggled with a little bit about our traveling lifestyle has been getting enough fruits and veggies while we're on the road. That's why we're really excited to be partnering with Organifi.
Organifi is a line of organic superfood blends that offer plant-based nutrition with high-quality ingredients and less than 3 grams of sugar in every serving. Organifi only chooses the highest quality plant-based ingredients for optimal health. Each blend is science-backed to craft the most effective doses with ingredients that are organic and free of fillers when possible. They mix convenience with great tasting flavors to get you all the nutrition you need while traveling.
Yeah, and one of the things that we really love about Organifi is that they actually have travel packs. So not only was this brand designed to keep us healthy, it's also designed to be taken on the road with you. So you can get the green juice in travel packs, the red juice, the gold, the immunity, as well as a number of others in the single serving travel packs. For us, we've been traveling with the green juice, the red juice, and the immunity, and we really love these flavors.
Yeah, I've been taking the green juice in the morning to make sure I'm getting lots of goodness for my day. And then whenever we make a smoothie, we've been mixing in the red juice, which adds lots of goodness while also just being very, very tasty.
Yeah, and then of course the immunity has been awesome in times where we feel that scratchy throat or maybe a little bit of a sniffle coming on. And we're really excited to be hitting the road again soon with all of Organifi's different juice blends in our travel packs. So if you would like to get started with Organifi or check out what they have to offer, you can head on over to Organifi.com/wanderers and then use the code WANDERS, WANDERERS, to get 20% off your order. Once again, that's Organifi.com/wanders and use the code WANDERS for 20% off.
Yeah, and I know it seems like you had some pretty crazy experiences with the animals doing it. I know there was one video you posted of a cheetah. Can you kind of talk us through some of those animal experiences?
Yeah, it's kind of like every experience kept topping the last one. When we were in Lake Manyara, we felt like, oh my goodness, this bull elephant came right up to our safari vehicle and walked right alongside. I have a picture of him,
peering in the window,
eyeballing into our window. And so that was such a close contact experience with a young bull elephant. And then when we went to Ngorongoro Crater, the black rhino crossed right in front of our path. And it just felt like this doesn't happen every day.
Well, when your guide gets so excited about it and is like, this never happens, you have no idea, like you always see them from a distance. You start to get even more excited and realize what a big moment some of these things are.
Yeah. And we saw, and then the sad side of, the circle of life there, we saw a zebra that had been slit open by a lion the night before. And he was kind of limping around with this open, huge flesh wound. But
still living, eating, grazing, rocking life best he could.
Yikes.
Yeah.
But there's some, we definitely had a lot of circle of life talks with the kids there, but they got it, I think. And then the cheetah in the Serengeti was just incredible. We'd been kind of on a search for a cheetah there, and there's really cool. The Serengeti is the size of Switzerland. It's huge, and you can go off-roading there in certain areas. And we did to see this cheetah, and then we were just standing there, and the cheetah had 4 or 5 cubs with her. Yeah. And she came toward our vehicle and then just jumped up on it. And this is an open roof vehicle with a canopy on top.
And so our guide quickly said, get in the vehicle, please. Get in the vehicle, please. For us to pop down, because you stand up above the vehicle or with half of your body outside the vehicle looking out the roof. And so we said, get down, please, get down. So we all popped down into the safari vehicle, and the mother cheetah just jumped right on top of the back of the safari vehicle. And it was
insane. It was like one of those like terrifying, but also exhilarating moments where you don't know what you want to, you don't know if you're like so excited or if you should be absolutely terrified. But the guide was just kind of like, I was like to our guide, how certain are you that this canopy is not going to break? Because at one point the cheetah decided just to kind of used it as like a viewing point for a moment, and then just decided to take a little rest and like lay down in the canopy, like literally 3 inches above my head. And I was like, how certain are you that this is not going to break? And at that time, I'm just kind of holding Jagger in the corner, and I don't have my phone on or any camera on me because I was not prepared for that. And he's like, it's fine. I'm certain it won't break. Like, I forget what he said, 200%. I'm certain that it's not going to break. And so then we just started kind of like embracing the moment a little bit, but it was
5 minutes of silent terror and exhilaration.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I feel like as you were telling that story, I felt like my body kind of get tense and my stomach get a little bit nervous. And I'm curious, like, how did the kids do with that? Because that must be like, I mean, pretty exciting, but also you're like, I feel like, even when you're young, like cheetahs are not like pets. Like you don't like pet cheetahs,
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're, again, like we're able to travel with the kids because they listen well. They don't do too many crazy kid things. And I don't know how else to say that. Like they're not going to like go when we say get down, be quiet. They're like, they're pretty good listeners. And when the guide is saying like, it's okay, just watch. He's like, just watch and take pictures. But I was like, I can't even get my camera. I don't want to move.
Yeah. The kids are really good at matching the energy of the rest of us. So we were really silent and calm, and they were able to just kind of mirror that. Now, I was really close to the cheetah when she first jumped up on the roof. And so I basically fell silently to the ground while I was still taking pictures. And our daughter was right up next to me, and she kept leaning over my shoulder to get closer to the cheetah. And I was like, what are you doing? And she said, I want to see.
but they were good. But it took us, I would say, like afterward, we were like, oh my gosh, is anybody's heart still pounding? Like an hour later, I was like, is anybody else's heart still pounding? And Henley was like, what are you talking about, Mom? That happened a while ago. And I was like, I know, but it's still exhilarating.
And we were lucky that it was one of the few times there were other safari vehicles near us. And so this other vehicle, we exchanged WhatsApp numbers and they sent us some pictures. So we actually have some pictures of the cheetah on top of the vehicle with us inside.
Which was crazy because we didn't see other safari vehicles like most of the days. Yeah.
Yeah. What a cool moment to have experienced. That's just amazing. And we'll put a link to like your Instagram and stuff because I've checked out those photos. And when I saw them, I was like, oh my God, Ryan, you need to come look at this.
It was very cool. And our guide had even said in his 13 years of guide, it's only happened twice to him.
It was the second time ever in 13 years.
Yeah. So he was on a high too about it.
It's great.
That's
everywhere
so
we go,
cool.
the people say, oh, the kids will bring you luck. And so every time we would come back with the story like that, all of the staff at the camp would say, it's the kids. They brought you the luck.
That's awesome. And then so from there, you guys went over to Zanzibar, right?
Yeah. So from there, we took a couple bush flights, like the flights that you take that are in the very small planes in the bush. Like you just take off in dirt airstrip. Yeah. Which was really cool experience. But I also am not a huge fan of little planes, but I managed. And yeah, we flew over to Zanzibar and we went to a property in Nungwi, which is the top of Zanzibar. So Zanzibar, we kind of planned on our own. This was the part of the trip that they got us there. And then we were kind of on our own after that. And the first place we stayed was a Hilton because we typically love Hilton properties for the most part, or they're just like easy for us to book. And we didn't love it there.
Yeah, it was a beachfront property, which was great, but just the area wasn't our favorite. The food wasn't our favorite. And so we it's one of those rare times we said, okay, let's just pause and change direction. And we do that pretty rarely on our trips because generally we've researched so much that things tend to work out. But this one just didn't feel like a good fit for us after the amazing experiences we just had. So we actually ran some quick searches and switched gears. And luckily at like the Hilton property, we were able to kind of cancel at the last minute. And so we didn't have to lose any funds, but we switched gears and moved properties to a different location on the island.
And that just made our experience. It just kind of brought to our attention again that sometimes, we've talked about this too, where two people can go to the exact same place at the exact same time and have completely different views of a place or experiences. And I felt like that was kind of Zanzibar for us when we booked the first place first, then we moved to a different part and we booked this like more boutique resort called the Zanzi Resort, which we just fell in love with. And we got upgraded to this villa with our own pool overlooking the ocean with our own private beachfront access. And it was just, the food was divine. The people were divine. And you just felt the energy was just different. And then all of a sudden we loved Zanzibar. We went from being like, we don't really like Zanzibar. Why does everybody love it? To, oh my gosh, we love Zanzibar. We never want to leave.
Yeah, I feel like it's always so interesting because and this is something Ryan and I have talked about quite a bit, is like how your experience of a place can really be determined by factors like, where you're staying in a city, like, and then the actual like, Airbnb hotel. And then, the weather can be like a huge influence. Like if it's pouring rain the whole time, it might not be as nice as if you have sunny times. And I think sometimes you think like, oh, well, we booked this, we should just like push through, or we should just stay because we don't want to lose money. But I think that's a really good example of like, just making the call to change and luckily not losing money on it. And then having a completely different experience of this place.
Yeah, it was a good reminder for us too, because like Jake said, that we don't do it often. And we also probably don't push ourselves to do it often enough if we need to. But this just, it was the 180 of how we felt about Zanzibar.
Yeah, and especially coming off all the highs from the rest of Tanzania, from the mainland Tanzania, it just felt like it wasn't stacking up. And then
the food.
The food was such a letdown compared to all the beautiful food we had everywhere else. And then we went to the Zanzibar resort, and it just felt like the nicest place we'd ever stayed.
Yeah. And we had just come, one place we forgot to mention in Zanzibar, which is one that I would highly recommend also, is called Gibbs Farm. And it was this organic, acres and acres of this organic farmland. And it was literally farm to table food. Like they milk the cows and make the yogurt and the cheese, and the bread is fresh and all the, it was just like my kind of place.
Yeah. That's on mainland Tanzania, right near the Ngorongoro crater, near Kiratu.
Yeah.
And Michelle found this place with the tour guide, I guess. And we just had the best time being a part of the livestock and touring around and harvesting vegetables, going on elephant walks and things like that.
Yeah. And so coming off of that place, yeah, we just needed something a little bit. We were so spoiled with good food, like healthy, local, delicious food, that it was worth the switch in Zanzibar.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually going to ask what the food's like in Tanzania, because I think we've eaten a number of different like African cuisines, but not Tanzanian food. Like, what are some of their traditional dishes there?
Well, you know what was surprising to us, because sometimes when we travel, and sometimes this, again, like we were just talking about, can depend on season, right? Like we had just we just arrived there right after the rainy season, and it was lush and green. And we were so excited because so much of the food was just fresh. It was like what they could get in the local market is what they served you. And they came up with all these different types of dishes, the
beautiful vegetables and fruits and
fish, and from Lake Victoria and the sea when you were closer to Zanzibar. And so it was surprisingly fresh, where sometimes we go places and we're like disappointed because the food isn't very local or fresh. This was just everything we wanted. And some of the food, what were some of the dishes that we ate? Like ugali?
Ugali's the big, maybe even the national dish, which is kind of like a potato-y yucca. Actually, it's cassava, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cassava, kind of like a mashed potato that they eat with different rice or beans.
Yeah. And it's like finger food.
Yeah.
And so they taught the kids how to make it. Why do I forget what it's made of? Is it cassava or maize? Or
I think it's cassava.
is it? Yeah. So but we just had, we mainly eat vegetarian, and we'll eat pescatarian when we can find local fish. And it was all of that. Like everything was just local and fresh. And
yeah, beautiful
delicious.
Pumpkin soups. All their soups were so delicious there.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And then I feel like there's, a lot of sort of misconceptions, I guess, about traveling anywhere in Africa. Did you guys find that it was pretty safe and pretty welcoming? And what was your overall experience kind of like in that regard?
We felt like extremely safe. And I will say this can be maybe different based on if you have, we were with a tour company most of the time. And so I think sometimes you can get a little bit different experience when you have somebody kind of watching your back, if you will, a little bit. But when we were out in the villages, we just fell in love with the people. We absolutely felt super safe, way safer than a lot of other places that we've traveled to. And yeah, did you feel?
Yeah, we did not go to the capital, Dar es Salaam. So we did not have really urban interactions, but we were in some of the towns like Arusha, and then in the villages, and everyone was so welcoming and warm. We did not feel safe. We did not feel unsafe at all during our travels. Like Michelle mentioned, I think someone was always kind of looking out for us and guiding us in a lot of those interactions. But other times we were on our own, just walking through villages and things. And certainly we got a lot of looks because we were the only travelers there that they had seen in a very long time. And so we certainly stood out in a lot of these small villages that we were in, but also felt safe throughout.
Yeah. And I'd say that my biggest concern before going to Tanzania was malaria. And it was a bit eye-opening to me because I'd spent weeks researching like malaria. Because we're going to be there for a month. That means essentially we would have to take malaria medication for a month and a half. Because you have to take a week before you arrive, a week after you leave. And I didn't want to do that for my kids or for us. And so after many talks with our doctor and just research, we decided not to take the malaria medication, but bring it with us, bring one dose with us just in case we got it. And the mosquitoes weren't even that bad. Like I thought we were going to see them all the time. It was really the flies in some places that were the worst. And we kind of realized I don't know, after talking to the locals, it was a bit eye-opening, I think, just in some regards, when a lot of locals were like, well, how do you think we all survive? Like, we have, medications for things and teas if you get malaria. And
yeah, we went to visit
things.
this organic coffee farm, and the guide was really excellent. And he talked about all the different medicinal plants that they use. And he kept grabbing things from the forest and saying, oh, if you have a bug bite, let me put this on it and it'll, relieve this sting. And they just really use all of the things that the earth provides around them to take care of their bodies.
Yeah, I think for us, we had definitely had a similar kind of eye-opening experience in Southeast Asia the first time we went, where it was like, before you go, everyone's like, oh, you absolutely have to be taking malaria medication if you're in a malaria zone. And I remember at the time, because we had kind of some of the lighter ones, but there was one in particular, I can't remember which it was, that was like messing with people's sleep, giving like really vivid, crazy dreams to people. And we were both like, our stomachs were all messed up. And then we just kept meeting people, and all the travelers who had been there a longer period of time, and obviously all the people who live there, were just like, oh yeah, we don't take that. Like, it's totally unnecessary. Just take it if you get it. Or like, you wear bug spray and you're going to be fine. But we get kind of, bought into this idea of like, oh, we're going to this zoning to do all of these crazy precautionary things.
Yeah. I mean, I was up sleepless nights about malaria. Like, should we even go to Tanzania? Is that a risk where like that, malaria, I mean, personally scared me way more than COVID. And then I don't know, it's just an eye-opening thing when we got there and realized that, you know what, maybe we just need to kind of rethink how we think this. And we were happy with the decision we made to bring the malaria medication in case we got it and had signs of it. And then we could have dosed accordingly for that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you really plan for that. And because until talking with those locals, it really changed our vision of it. And so, yeah, you can do all this research online and think through things when you're going to places that are deemed dangerous in different ways. But until you get there, a lot of times it's not as the world makes it seem until you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had the same experience. I mean, we were over in Asia when Zika was kind of a big thing as well. And, our doctor had kind of warned us, like, Zika's in the places you're going to go, like, you should be cautious. And I think we were kind of aware of, you could find like this map where Zika was. We were in Singapore at the time, and we were like, okay, there's been like one reported case of Zika in like a neighboring neighborhood to where we're staying. Like, we should, put on bug spray, even though we're in this like urban city. And then I think like we got there and it's just like nobody was talking about it. There was nothing on the news about it. And we were like, okay, I think we're fine. Like, there's like one person in all of Singapore with Zika. Like, I think we're good. So we just kind of, I think we cared about it for like, honestly, 5 minutes, and then just didn't worry about it for the next like 8 months.
Yeah. It's like one of those things, you want to be aware of these different things, but sometimes the fear and the reality, I mean, are just different.
Yeah, absolutely.
No parallels to any of the ongoing circumstances in any of these life lessons, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
And so you guys got back to the States and spent a bit of time in the States after Tanzania, right?
Yeah, we spend the summers in Rhode Island, in New England, in the US. And it's just a very outdoor, beach heavy, paddleboarding every day kind of lifestyle there.
Well, and we do it because this is one of those things that we have just decided helps us keep community in certain aspects of our children's lives and our lives. And that way we keep some things consistent in their lives, because otherwise we are constantly asking them to adapt to this new place and that new place and going all over the place.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually kind of curious about that, because I know you guys have been very much sort of like on the road since we met you, which was 2016, I think. I mean, Jagger was still in diapers and could barely talk at that point. So obviously lots has changed over the last 4 or 5 years. But, the kids were, and you guys as well, were pretty much at home for like a year. Was it like just pretty normal getting back on the road again, or how did everyone kind of adapt to that?
I think that, the kids are so adaptable. I don't know if it's because we just throw them into these situations. We don't make that big of a deal of it, or we get excited for it. I think maybe a little bit is that we get excited like, we're going to try out this. It's going to be fun, you know? And so they were really adaptable to go into school in Rhode Island and spend that time in Rhode Island. And they embraced it completely. And then when we decided to go to Tanzania, they were sad to leave their school, but they were so excited to travel. It was like this, it was kind of, I think, what we feel too, as adults and their parents, is like, we're sad to leave this community and we have this like great little routine here, but we're super excited for the next adventure. And that's exactly what the kids say to us too. It's like, we can't wait to get on the airplane again tomorrow, but we're so sad to leave here too. And this like kind of mixed emotion.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's cool to hear that they are adaptable and that, you know, it's kind of just like the exact same way as we feel as adults. Like, I always feel that when we leave or we go somewhere else, that mix of like sad to close one chapter, but also excited for the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so summer, you know, coming to an end in Rhode Island, what were you guys kind of thinking in terms of like figuring out your next step for travel plans?
Oh man, we spent in this summer, I told Jake, was the most frustrated I've ever been trying to plan for travel. It was also the most time we put into travel than just to have it like, it felt like pulled out from underneath us, even though it was our decision, I guess, each time to not do a certain trip. But with COVID and restrictions and quarantines and regulations and just not knowing, I'm sure you guys are going through the exact same thing. And any traveler listening, it's just a really hard time to plan anything. And I mean, even it's day by day almost. And so we had this whole trip planned. Jake really wanted to go to Greece, do the Greek Isles, Italy, Albania. We had just spent hours, countless hours planning this, almost booked it. And then
they started to impose new restrictions in some of those countries. And it just felt like if we book this right now, by the time our trip starts, we're not even going to be allowed into the country. And so we had to reverse course and say, let's save that for another year. It's just too restrictive there. It seems like it's going to start to get more into lockdown mode, and that's not going to make for a nice vacation, nice travel over there. So we rethought our plans and centered on Central America.
Yeah. I mean, it was just we did such a 180 swap, and we had spent so many hours. It was very much a struggle. It was the first time I really felt that much of a struggle of planning.
It felt defeating.
Yeah. That's a good word.
It was like, oh, we have this whole kind of itinerary booked and all the flights were planned out. And then we just had to walk away from it.
Yeah, that's such a bummer. And I think that we can definitely relate to that in, you know, with our own travels. And I don't know, it really does feel like day to day. And that's not really like, you know, how you get the best flight deals or the best accommodation and that type of thing. But it's just a weird time to be a traveler. And I think it's like you either approach it from like, we're going to have to kind of do things more last minute and just, you know, adapt as we go, or like just do what we want to do and risk maybe getting caught in a lockdown or getting caught in like I think Greece went from being completely open to basically overnight was like, you know, a bunch of stuff's closed. There's I think there was like a curfew or something like that, a bunch of other stuff. And it's just like, you know, I guess you just have to embrace that if that's where you really want to go, or find a place that's hopefully not going to do that type of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly what happened, is that it was open. We were like, okay, perfect. Greece is open. Let's go. And then it was like, wait a minute, it might not be open by the time we get there.
Yeah. And you know, we're talking about some of the negative aspects of it, but I will say on the other side of the coin, when we were in Tanzania in the Serengeti, all of the drivers that we ran into, the people that work at the camps, they said, you know, you are so lucky to be here right now. This is the only time we can ever remember where there have been so few safari vehicles everywhere. Usually you're following a line of 10 other safari vehicles everywhere you go. And we were just all by ourselves the entire time. It felt like we were the only people in the Serengeti.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. And then along the same lines, we've kind of realized too, that you can get some good deals booking last minute, especially because there's not many tourists in a lot of these spots. And I was kind of telling some other travelers the other day how I've been getting some really good deals is just messaging different resorts. If we want to stay at, you know, maybe messaging 5 at a time, and to a place that we want to stay, and just saying on WhatsApp. I message them on WhatsApp. I just find it a lot easier than going back and forth in email if I can, and just saying, hey, do you have these dates available? And what's your best deal? And then waiting until they come back. And then after I look up what maybe booking.com or hotels.com or some of the other sites might be offering, I tell them, can you beat this with some extra perks so I can book through you? And then they come back with some better deal. Some of them do, not all of them. And then I'm like, well, what if we book for 2 weeks? And then they come back with even better deal. So we've been able to get some really good deals, kind of doing that last minute kind of negotiation.
It's certainly the opposite of how I prefer to travel. I like to travel and have everything booked for 6 months so we don't have to think about it. But like Michelle says, there certainly are some advantages to having, those last minute opportunities to change your plans and see where the deals are at the last minute.
The deals and the recommendations from other travelers. I think that's one of the things that along the way, somebody's like, oh, have you checked out that place up there, this island or this spot? And now we have the flexibility because we don't have it all planned out to a T.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's also, Amanda and I looked at each other while you were explaining that, Michelle, and we're thinking, we need to do more of this. We need to have some better negotiation skills.
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like I gave a course on it when we were at the World School last week. I was like, no, now you go back and say this. Now you go back and do that.
It's funny. Michelle always ends up with some free massage or spa credit. I don't know how that happens.
Well, you need to teach me your ways because I would love some free massages.
I do. I negotiate what I want in that.
I love that. And so you mentioned World School. We know you're in Nicaragua, but maybe can you tell us a little bit about like deciding on Nicaragua, how you found the World School and what that's been like?
Yeah. So this was, I've been following some of the World School programs. There's like pop-up things here and there, pop-up events. And
just so a lot of people haven't heard that term, World School, it basically refers to a different way to school your kids and it often includes some certain short-term programs that are kind of pop up in different locations where you're putting your kids with other travelers, typically include some type of sense of community where not only the kids are getting together for the school, but also the families and the parents are involved in some of these activities.
Yeah. And there's world schoolers that, just like we've been world schooling for the past 5 years, right? I mean, essentially just traveling the world and schooling our kids as we go. And now that it's becoming a little bit more popular among families, there's more kind of events that kind of people will hold, or trips or pop-up types of things around the world. And this one was a new one called Nica World School. It is he's from Nicaragua. She's from the US, and they have 3 kids, and she wants to start a world school here in Nicaragua where they moved to. And I'd been following along, but the timing just didn't really mesh up, and they were doing month-long sessions. She just opened it in May. And when our plans fell through, I said, Jake, I want to try this world school. I think it gives our kids some socialization. What we also realized is it gives us some socialization too, along the way, which was really, really nice. And so she let me in instead of a month. We had 2 weeks, that last 2 weeks of August. So we did the world school for the last 2 weeks of August. And it was a fun, unique experience. It was what I had hoped for, which was community, like I said, socialization for the kids. Basically, it was at this kind of resort that was not open because of COVID, and she rented it out for the summer. And there are like jungle cabanas. I was definitely camping. I'm not much of a camper, but this was definitely camping. But I wanted to do it because I love I'll do anything for the experience, essentially. And it was fun. It was like the setting was really cool, jungly, nothing luxurious, just like camping basically. And then they had like Spanish class in the morning, or folklore dance class, or yoga class, and all the meals were provided. And then they did excursions almost every afternoon. They took us on all these excursions, these local places and beaches and chocolate tour. And
yeah, so it was a great way to meet other travelers, to be involved and build this short-term pop-up community and also be accountable for certain things, right? So we also had, we did our own dishes every night and things like that. So it wasn't just like we were being serviced the whole time. We're really part of a group of people that are accountable to each other for this experience.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. I was telling Michelle when we were planning out this interview how I was like, you think I can just go to world school? Can just like 30 somethings just like show up and do world school? Because it just looks so awesome. I can pretend I'm like
You can
elementary
borrow
school
Henley and
age.
Jagger.
Okay, perfect. That's great. That might be less
Yeah.
weird. And then where are you guys now in
Yes, there was
Nicaragua?
a cool thing.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So now we are at that Nicaragua school was a great experience, and it was a great intro into Nicaragua, and they were able to give us like that local side of things. And then now we are at a resort, one of the resorts that I negotiated with. It's called Aqua Wellness, and it's just a couple hours or an hour and a half north of San Juan del Sur. And
It's from the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, right on the water, and our villa overlooks a little cove. We have a little private beach here and our own little plunge pool, and it's awesome, cool little jungle resort.
yeah, this is a nice little taste of Nicaragua, and just some time for us to relax because we've been on the go for the last couple of weeks. And so this was, like I said, one of the places that I just had WhatsApped and said, hey, do you have any deals? And I think I emailed them back and forth a little bit to negotiate some stuff, but we love it here. And we're here until for a few weeks, essentially.
Yep.
Nice. That's awesome. And then what are your sort of plans after Nicaragua?
So after Nicaragua, we're going to the Yucatan and Quintana Roo. So we're going to go to explore some of the ruins throughout the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and to go to some of the towns. We've never traveled inland on the Yucatan, so we're going to go to Merida and some of the
Maybe
other,
Campeche.
yeah. And so we're just going to explore around. I think we're going to rent a car for a month there. We'll be in Mexico for about a month down there in the peninsula.
And then after that, we have plans to go to the Dominican Republic, which honestly has not really been on our list either. None of these places have really been on our list, but now we're super excited about them, and we've just fallen in love with Nicaragua. So we're hoping the whole trip is kind of like that. But in the Dominican, we're putting the kids in a school there for a 6-week session. And it's a little bit like a world school, but more of a permanent, also locals go there kind of school. So we're going to try that out in the Dominican and see how that goes.
Nice. That sounds awesome. And I'm curious, for people who are listening who are like, okay, maybe Nicaragua might be a good option. We just had some friends that spent a couple of months there that said it was great. How's it been with all the pandemic craziness? Like, is everything open? What's the vibe like there?
I think it kind of like most places, it probably depends a little bit where you go. San Juan del Sur, which I think most people are flying into Costa Rica and then crossing the border into.
Yeah, and just a touch on that. So it's actually really easy to fly into the northernmost airport in Costa Rica, Liberia, and then drive across the border into Nicaragua. At this time, the border is open. And so it's a really easy way to get to San Juan del Sur, because the airport in Nicaragua from Managua is a lot harder to get through because there are so few flights there. So a lot of people fly into Costa Rica and then go across by land into Nicaragua.
Hire a driver to the border and then hire another driver from the Nicaraguan border. And you don't need a PCR test to get into Costa Rica, but you do need certain traveler's insurance in Costa Rica, I believe. But to get into to Nicaragua, you do need a PCR test, of which we had in, every printed in color a million times. And I think they might have glanced at it kind of. And then we crossed over into the border, and then it's been pretty open. I mean, San Juan del Sur, there were a few places I think that required masks, but barely any. It felt very open. And here, no, people only seem to wear masks on the weekends when more people come in from Managua. I think Managua seems to be a place where masks are mandated a lot more. That's the capital city. And so,
yeah, it seems like we haven't been through all of them, but it seems like the cities are more wearing masks, but the little pueblos, the little coastal towns and things are much more open.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had to wear one at all since we've been here, and we shouldn't, because we're outside in nature, kind of like away from everybody. And there's no quarantines, anything like that. So it feels like you forget about COVID for a while, which are kind of like the places that we're seeking out, so that we don't have it constantly in our faces every day.
I will say about Nicaragua, though, they did have a bunch of political unrest in 2018, and they also have an election coming up in November of 2021. And so there's a lot of political, I don't want to go too down farther the rabbit hole, but there is some political issues that you need to be aware of and kind of research before you come here.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of what Jake would refer to as like a tourist hangover from the 2018 political protests and stuff that were pretty bad here, I guess. And so people have deemed Nicaragua pretty unsafe because of it. But honestly, now it seems like it's like that tourist hangover. However, we're in an election season. And so we will leave before the election. I think like a lot of people tend to, just in case something happens again. But otherwise, it seems wonderfully open. The people are really friendly, nice. We love it. We feel very safe here.
One other thing, though, is that they did, during the pandemic, they did lock down the borders so that it was very hard to get in and out of Nicaragua during the height of the pandemic. So it's also another possibility that it could happen again, the lockdown.
Yeah, no, that's all really good information. So thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like, assuming they don't close the borders again, that it's like a pretty good option to be right now. And it sounds like you guys have some really cool plans for like the fall and into the winter.
Yeah, no, we're excited to kind of do a little travel, a little relaxation, and some schooling here and there for the kids. And I think that's our kind of plan moving forward. And into next year, we might have some more world schooling plans where we kind of hop and jump around different world schools to give the kids a little bit more of that in their traveling life.
Yeah, and also to keep up their Spanish. We want them to keep up their Spanish education and learning and using their Spanish on a daily basis, even if it's just at things like ordering their meals and things like that. It's great to have them listening to Spanish, hearing Spanish, speaking Spanish as much as possible.
Yeah, that is awesome. How are they doing? I imagine it must be cool for them as well to get like a sense for a bit of a different accent now traveling out of some of these different Latin American countries.
Yeah, certainly there's different slang and different ways of asking for things, and they have to pick that up everywhere we go. I still think that our oldest daughter, Henley, she has just been super accelerated throughout since being in school in Mexico. And so that was such a great foundation for her that she's really able to hear every little thing that happens. It's always a little bit more challenging to get the kids to speak more, but she has been so great. And we still only, whenever they are allowed to watch something like a little movie or a show, we only let them watch it in Spanish. So we try to keep that up even on their downtime. And then our younger son, Jagger, he had a very good start to Spanish, but he was not as old and as immersed in it at the time. So he is on a different pace, but he also does really well. And he's very vocal when he's asking for things, and
he's confident.
Yeah. So I think they're each kind of have their own trajectory, but it's great to see them growing at each stage.
Awesome. And so for anyone who wants to follow along on these upcoming travels, where can they follow your travels?
So right now, we were posting on retired toddlers, as you know, but because the kids are getting, it was kind of a twofold. One is just because we don't make money with retired toddlers. We never have. We just post for the fun of it. And it was just becoming a lot to keep up with when our other businesses are making money. And the kids are just getting older and we want to respect their privacy a little bit more. We stopped retired toddlers, and I'm just posting on Michelle Schomp. So you'll see all of our travel stuff on Michelle Schomp now from Tanzania onward. You'll find it there.
Okay,
on
awesome.
Instagram.
We'll make sure there's a link for that. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much for this conversation. It's been so awesome to catch up with you. And I just feel like both Ryan and I are like, okay, Tanzania, Nicaragua, we got to get to these places.
No, go to someplace we're going to be so we can all meet up.
Well, we'll be in Mexico. So I think there's the possibility.
I think so too. We'll have to chat about that. It's always fun meeting up. And I think that's one of the reasons that we love the traveling community, because it really does become, and what we're kind of finding with the world schooling community, the same, is that it becomes this like thing where you do end up seeing each other here and there around the world, and becomes a community in of itself, which is very fun as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think we found that like just the pandemic's kind of like forced us to slowed down quite a bit. And so we've just been kind of in Mexico for the last like little while, but it's allowed us to create more of a community and kind of, connect with friends who are there more than if we were just there for like a couple weeks or a month or something like that. So yeah, I think there's always silver linings to crappy situations, right? And I think that's one of them for the pandemic, at least for us.
Yeah, you're spending a lot less on flights, but a lot more on smoothie bowls.
Yeah.
Our Uber Eats budget, which was already high, has gone to astronomical new levels.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out The World Wanderers Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.